Welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Welcome to today's podcast, Brett. And we always like to start things off by just kind of going back to the beginning, really, and just asking how and when you got into combat sports.
To be honest, like I said, it's back in South Wales. It's crazy growing up, especially where we're from in Swansea. Being brought up on a council estate here. My mother was a single parent with 3 kids. I got an older sister, then it's me, and then it's my brother who's a year and a half younger than me. And I felt like my mother just we were always playing and stuff, but my mother wanted to take us to a local judo school. So we ended up going there. I think I was 4 years old. My brother was 3 years old. And then we ended up doing judo. I ended up doing judo all the way up until the ages of 16, with aspiration of being a competitor in the 2012 Olympics. That was the goal, really, when I originally set out in the sport of judo. But it just became an unrealistic goal. And unfortunately, I feel like, not that I failed in what I did, but I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. And I guess looking back now, that probably would have been quite detrimental. But, I did the more sensible thing, which was trying to do the sport of judo, but put it towards something else. Like, for example, I couldn't use judo on a football pitch. I'd get sent off a lot, but I couldn't do that,
I'm pretty sure I've seen Teddy Sheringham use judo on a football pitch once before. It was pretty impressive, actually.
Old Teddy Sheringham loves the judo throw. But like I said, I knew I was watching a lot of mixed martial arts, and someone you guys would definitely have heard of. I used to watch a lot of this show called WEC, which Brad Pickett was a big name on that, And I just decided at the age of 16 that I wanted to do it, and I haven't looked back since, really,
And so, was there like places in Swansea that was, evolving to then train people as mixed martial artists, or was it a case of you then went and learned Muay Thai, or you then went and boxed, or was there like clubs that were doing like the whole kind of mixed martial arts?
When I started mixed martial arts, I'd say it was more, we were just coming out of the dark era where the game was run by thugs, ex-drug dealers, you name it, they were filling the game up, and I felt like I'd begun my journey in this sport as that period was finishing. But then again, there wasn't many mixed martial arts schools there. So doing judo with my stepfather up until the age of 16, and then I wanted to do mixed martial arts. I was quite, believe it or not, I'm not a very intelligent person, but when it came to mixed martial arts, I knew exactly what I needed to do, which was very strange. And I knew I needed to work on my ground game, needed to work on boxing, needed to work on the Muay Thai element. So that's what I did, I ended up going to my local Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, and I was there for 12 years, and I've always been primarily a grappler, but I've worked on my striking skill set. Like I said, that part's been very difficult because, I've grappled my whole life, really, up from 4 until 29. I've just grappled, and I'll always do that in my fights, no matter what. It's what's brought me to where I'm at today. This gym I'm currently in at the minute was because of the grappling aspect of what I do. And everything's evolving. But back then I just used to grapple heavy, so I had a good wrestling background, which is very rare for a Brit to have good wrestling, but also with the grappling aspect as well.
So you said you started at 4. So you, from a very early age, probably knew how to sort of handle yourself. But one thing I don't know whether you can necessarily be taught is the kind of mental aspect of fighting and handling yourself in a physical confrontation. Is that something that also came naturally to you, given kind of the areas that you grew up in, or was it something that you had to kind of work on, that kind of mental aspect? Because clearly doing judo from the age of 4, you were probably confident enough, right?
Yeah, no, really. I think the reason why my mother put me into judo was because of I was quite a timid, quiet kid, I guess you could say. It definitely though brought the confidence out in me doing judo, you know. And I used to I hate arguing. I hate like basically any sort of confrontation. I hate fighting in general. I'm not a big fan of it. The sport of mixed martial arts I absolutely love, but when it comes to actual, you know, like falling out with people, I don't like it. So that side of things, no, I wouldn't say I'm a very sort of confident person in that aspect. But when it comes to competing in sport, I love that. You know, it's mad, really. It's so confusing that I don't like fighting, but yet again, I like fighting. That's basically what I'm trying to say. You know, I love the sport of mixed martial arts. I love the sports. I love the sport inside of it in general. But when it comes to outside of that, like growing up, I never got in many fights. I used to try and avoid them at all costs. You know, like I said, my nickname in the judo club was Crybaby. I used to cry all the time. You know, that was it. And then when it turned around, I hit 16 years old, and I wanted to cross over to mixed martial arts. That's when, I don't know, man. It just seems as if the tougher side of me woke up, I guess you could say. And yeah, I've had some crazy old fights which I've had to rely on that sort of skill set there. And yeah, I definitely say the years of doing judo and mixed martial arts in the early days has definitely brought that confidence out in me as a competitor. And yeah, like I said, it's an aspect now which I use very well. And it's mad because when I was a kid, my mother tells me all the time, she goes, I never thought you would have been doing this sport when you were younger, you know?
That's amazing. I mean, I think I was probably nicknamed Crybaby on the football pitch, let alone on a sport where you were actually trying to like hurt each other slightly. So it gives me confidence that maybe one day I will find the inner tough guy in me.
Yeah, definitely, man. You know, it's mad, see, because that was the thing with me. Like everybody always says the same. I had a bet on my dad. It's a funny little story, actually. I had a bet on my stepfather, and you know, I think I haven't got children, but I guess if your child comes up to you and says, I want to be a cage fighter, I guess the alarm bells start going off, really. But I ended up having to sit down and said to my mother and father, Mom, Dad, you know, I want to be a cage fighter. You know, I want to be a mixed martial artist. I want to. And my dad looked at me and laughed, and he said, Brett, you fall over and cry. Like, why do you want to be a mixed martial artist for? You're getting punched in the face. And then I said, no, this is what I want to do. I want to compete here. And I don't know, my parents kind of said, I don't think it's going to be good for you. And it got to a point where I was arguing with them that I wanted to fight. And I said to my dad, I said, I'll get to 10-0 pro. And I said, and when I get to 10-0 pro, you will buy me a belt. I said, I'll prove you wrong. And I had my first 5 amateur fights and went to 5-0. And then I went to 10-0 as a professional. And I come home one day and there was a belt on my bed. So that was my dad's way of saying, you proved me wrong. So here's the belt, you know?
And in regards to that, you know, working on that confidence, and before we even kind of get to you know, to your time in the UFC and the Bellator, in those early fights, and approaching them fights with confidence, and what have you got a routine that you do before you walk out to the octagon, and has that changed as your career's developed, or have you got a kind of a format that you adhere to every time you fight? Is there a process that you do in the back room before you walk out?
I think realistically, it's all been the same throughout the whole career. What I might be different than most fighters, but I feel like the nervous energy before the fight is the exact same every time. You know, I think it's I'm just as scared as I've been for my first ever amateur fight to my last ever, you know, UFC fight. It's been the same sort of nervous energy. And I'll be honest, I'll speak to it in detail about it. I walk to the cage. I'm very scared. You know, I feel, you know, this is probably the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever had to do. And then, you know, you're walking out, you listen to your favorite song on the way out, and that nervous energy just gets multiplied by 10 when you listen to a song while you're feeling like that. And then you get to the side of the cage, and then you're getting checked over, and you're getting the Vaseline put on, and then you look back at your corner, and these are the people who have spent the last 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 weeks or whatever it is preparing you for this fight. And that's where you say your goodbyes. And then you walk in the cage, which in my opinion is the most loneliest place in the world. You know, you get, although your cornermen are so close to you, they seem so far away. And every time I think like this, it just makes me feel so much more scared before actually fighting. But I feel like that nervous energy, that being scared moment in that time kind of brings out that fight to me, where I genuinely believe that every time I fight, I do genuinely fight for my life. And I think that's the way I do fight, because, you know, at the end of the day, if I let this guy have his own way, then I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get physically hurt you. So there is an element of my mindset. Physically, I do everything the same, but my mindset, I have certain points in my in my warm up as I'm walking out, as I'm walking to the cage, that I'm thinking. And then when I'm standing opposite the cage, like I've stood opposite the cage with some scary old people, and looking over the cage at people like Pedro Munoz, Aljamain Sterling, you know, Joe Soto, looking across them guys. And the last question I say to myself before the ref says go, I say, Brett, have you done everything in your power in camp to get this fight done? And I've said yes every time. I've never had to question myself on that. And that's generally the mindset process I have when I walk out to a fight anyway.
Does that have does it have any impact on you, the kind of expectation of the fans from Great Britain and Wales, obviously, like knowing that there's you know, the whole of Wales is going to be like there just willing you to win and wanting you to win? Does that ever enter into your mindset?
Yeah, the last fights do, being like in Fight Island, and being in Fight Island, not having the crowd there was in my opinion, a very negative thing for myself. I remember my UFC debut in Belfast and having my Welsh like support there. Most of them were family and friends. And I was so scared, and I think the crowd had got me pumped up so much that I couldn't even remember walking to the actual cage itself.
Wow.
It was such a nerve-wracking experience. And then the fight happened, and then it was 3 5-minute rounds, and I don't remember up to an hour and a half after that fight. And even to this day, I still don't know what happened an hour and a half after my UFC debut. And I do feel like it's that support and that nervous energy and the people there who are pushing you. Like, having no fans in these venues, honestly, it's heartbreaking. It is, and it generally does put that extra 5% into my game. I truly believe that. And it's a shame that this next one's going to have to be the same sort of way, that is going to be no fans there. But I know we're coming to the end of that. But having that support there, that Welsh support, that UK support, honestly, it's like having that extra person just whispering in your ear when times get tough in that fight. Look, you can do this. And that Belfast fight for my UFC debut is, ironically, I'll always remember it, but I'll always remember not remembering anything really, you know.
What was more daunting for you then? You mentioned your UFC debut, but also you were Titan FC champion and Cage Warriors champion. Is that's right?
Yeah. I won my go on, sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, what was more daunting for you, fighting for titles or the UFC debut? Because obviously the UFC is put on such a pedestal in terms of, you know, the biggest organization within the sport to a lot of people. So what's more daunting, fighting for a world title or doing your UFC debut?
That's a good question. But honestly, it's mad, because like my Cage Warriors world title, I had a fight twice in one night for that. You know, I did a 3 5-minute round fight, and then an hour and a half later, I had to go into a world title fight and fight 5 5s. So yeah, that was quite a nervous experience. But compared to the UFC, it wasn't even on par. You know, you kind of grow up in this game, and the mecca of mixed martial arts, in my opinion, was the UFC when I did it then. You know, and to actually put them black leather gloves on, which say UFC across them, was such a huge moment in my life, you know, and the nervous feeling, I think that's why I did black out, is because the nervous feeling before the fight had probably mentally put me in that way. And yeah, it doesn't even come on par. I'd say, although I've been scared for every single fight I've had, that debut in Belfast, and it was against a really good guy. It was against a South Korean guy called Kwan Ho Kwak, who was a two-time world champion with two different promotions, such as I was, and it was probably to this day one of my greatest performances. And I do believe that's because of the nervous energy before the fight and how I felt, you know.
One of the things that you know, you said that you ask yourself before, you know, before the fight starts, have I done everything that I need to do? And you've always said yes. And one of the things that we like to ask fighters about is the kind of, you know, how much of that pre-fight ritual, you know, is based around that weight cut, and is that something that you find quite easy to do, or is that something that is a big part of your training that can be a drag? I mean, I imagine it's a drag for most fighters, but what I mean is it, you know, something that is a big part of the fight for you, weight cut? Like, what's your sort of approach and thoughts on weight cutting?
I would definitely say that this sport has when I come into this sport, I would never have said I had any issues, you know, when it comes to physical issues, mental issues, and like that. But becoming a professional in this game, it's definitely come with a lot of negatives. You know, I've got a lot of pros. Of course, I've got a lot of pros. I'm sitting in my own little setup here, my own little gym, you know, and that's because of fighting. So there's a lot of pros that go with this sport, but I think a lot of fighters won't really speak about the negative side of things, which is quite big in my opinion. You know, I watched a documentary a few weeks ago on Freddie Flintoff living with like being bulimic, really, you know, and I've realized that watching them documentaries that I definitely have issues with my diet and with weight cutting and with eating food. You know, I have, and it's completely and utterly generated from this sport. I never had it before I did this sport, but all of a sudden now I've got it. And yes, I've gone better in that area where I used to struggle years ago. You know, I used to skip meals just to make sure I was lighter. You know, my girlfriend say I'd pass the shop window and I'd have to lift my top up to check how I look and how I see, and if I look big or if I look fat, or do you know what I mean? And it you know, that was the side of things which I know it's kind of scarred me. Doing my earlier careers, it's kind of scarred me. So a lot of my training now has sole focus on making weight, really. So I do a lot of conditioning, cardio based stuff to get my weight down. And since this pandemic has hit, I've kind of stepped it up a gear with my professionalism when it comes to this diet and when it comes to trying to lose weight. And I'm becoming better, but I've kind of accepted that this will always be an issue for me personally when it comes to the diet side and the eating side of fighting and cutting weight, unfortunately. And I think it's because of the first couple of fights of trying to make weight and failing weight a few times. It scarred me, really, you know.
That's so interesting, because we and I'm really sorry to hear you have gone through that, and that you feel like that's going to be with you for a long time. Because I mean, we see the polar opposite of it. You see some fighters that, you know, outside of camp they balloon. They are absolutely massive, and you don't necessarily hear a lot about fighters that have gone the other way and outside of camp are having issues with weight or thinking about weight. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like not just from a sporting point of view. Now it's you feel like it's part of you even outside of training and fighting in mixed martial arts. This is something that will be something that you think about or you consider before having, you know, those cheat meals and things like that.
Well, yeah, no, it's like, and like, it's not, it never has affected my relationship with my girlfriend, but my girlfriend would be a better person to speak about this with the decisions that I make. I don't have cheat meals. You'll see me, I'll pick at something. I'm not going to say like I'm like, I've had a 17-week camp to this point, and I will get a day where like I'll eat a sweet, but don't get me wrong, the mental battles I've got then for eating that sweet would be completely and utterly just like there's no point. So I stopped doing cheat meals because of it's not worth. I can afford to do it. I can afford to eat these meals. If I want to go and eat the pizza, I can actually afford to do it because my body's conditioned enough now, so I can eat this meal and it wouldn't really have much of an effect. But the mental side of things, it's not worth the mental problem I'm going to have eating this cheat meal. So I prefer just eat my normal meals and get through that week. After a fight, like you said, I will balloon up. I used to go so big, really big. I used to go from like, I bear in mind I fight at 61 kilos, and I remember jumping on the scales a few years back, and I was like 77 kilos. It's like 16 kilos over my fight weight, which is ridiculous. Really. I look like a bowling ball. I had a circle head. So, I did have them problems, and like now I wouldn't say like I said, I wouldn't say I've got it sussed out because I haven't, but I've got a handle on it, and that is thankful to the people I've got behind me right now. My brother's a massive part in that. With even he says to me, it's okay, we're accepting it. It is what it is. This is the problem. I guess that with the highest level in any sport, there's going to be some sort of issues. I've got issues with a lot of things. I got issues with when it comes to speaking about money with my team. I got issues about talking about food. I got a load of issues, but it's okay. I think the first part of dealing with that is accepting it, and I have accepted it. But my biggest issue was probably was weight cutting, and bear in mind, listen, I'm not afraid to say it's I lost my 2 world titles because of it. I've never lost a world title fight, but I did get 2 belts taken off me because of weight issues. And ever since then, I've been bang on. I made weight every single time, but I think it was because of my lack of knowledge in the weight cutting program. Because we're not like rugby teams or football teams where they've got millions of pounds pumped into the sort of diet side of things, and the UFC PI wasn't about, years ago. This is only for UFC fighters, so everybody else outside that promotion, you got to kind of find your own way of doing it. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people, there wasn't back then anyway, that could have helped me really.
And you said you've got issues with talking about money, and you've been through quite a lot of times in your life, from what I've seen, of not having much money, to the point where there was a situation where didn't you spend like a few months basically living in the gym that you were working out of, like you had a sleeping bag in the gym and you were just there because you couldn't afford the bus ticket home? Have I got that right?
Yeah, that story is accurate. That story is accurate, because I can tell you the price of a ticket is £2.70. You know what I mean? Like a ticket back from the bus from the gym back home, and I got to a point where, and bearing in mind, I think I'd been a world champion by this point, and I couldn't afford that. So my bed at the time, I remember, was 2 leather couches pushed together, and I had my sleeping bag. I get woke. The fighters that have actually lived in gyms, because when a fighter tells you I live in the gym, and they're bragging about it, they don't live in the gym. Because if you live in the gym, it's not a very nice place to live. I remember like being in this gym, and I could do wrestling. I wasn't the only person. I wasn't the only living thing in that gym, I don't think, at the time. You do wrestling about the place, and I lived like that, to the point where the gym had like a sky box, and I'd fall for it every time, and I'd go on Sky and I'd see The Simpsons, and I'd go, yes, and I'd click on there, and there'd be no Sky card in the sky box, so I wasn't able to watch it. I'd fall for that every single night after training, and it was, and the moments like that, you can't believe, like, it's, and like I look back now, and obviously, them times have built me into the character I am, and it's mad because I feel like when it comes to fighting, I feel like I'm a very tough person when it comes to fight. I can take a shot, like I'm very good, but when it comes to everyday life, I feel like, yeah, I'm probably not as tough, in that area.
And like, was there a point where you thought this may never happen, or did you always believe, even in those kind of dire situations where you can't even afford the bus ticket home, did you always have the belief that, no, I am going to make a career out of this sport?
I did feel like that the career side of things for myself, I felt like, I think I could have made it into a career, but I felt like I was doing everything I could to make it into a career, but it just wasn't happening. It just wasn't taking off. I'd won 2 world titles and there wasn't even a phone call from the UFC. And I thought, it wasn't as if like I had a mixed record. I was 12-0. I was undefeated. I never lost a fight, And when I had I had the title fight with Titan FC, and then I went out for my first defense I fought a Ultimate Fighter veteran and beat him. So I was 12-0 in the July of 2015. And then I had a fight scheduled for the March of 2016, but then dislocated my shoulder in January. Dislocated my shoulder in the January 2 years prior. But then it's the long-term effect that started coming to play where it would just dislocate during training. So I needed to undergo surgery. So I was 12-0. I was just come off my shoulder surgery where it was going to take 6 months to kind of heal. There was no phone call from the UFC. So at that point, I'd say in like the May of 2016, I kind of was not accepting, but I kind of thought that this was becoming the end of the journey, And I'd won 2 world titles. And it was that was very hard to accept at the time, very, very hard. But it was one of them things where I just thought, I guess this is it. This is the luck of the draw, This is not the sport. Unfortunately, I always tell the fighters in this game, if you're underprepared and you go into a fight, you're not prepared enough, you will get exposed. But in the same breath, you could do everything you can do, train as best you can, and you can still get exposed. This sport is so unforgiving, and it's all about opportunities and taking opportunities at the right time. Doesn't necessarily mean just taking an opportunity, you'll get there. It's taking opportunities at the right time and stylistically picking the right fights, not the easy fights, the right fights. And at that point in my career, I kind of accepted that maybe this was going to be the end of the road for me. The surgery I had on my shoulder wasn't small surgery. It was big surgery. It was like, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to come back from the shoulder surgery. And that was in the May of 2016. And then fast forward a few months later, and I get a phone call. Hey, Brett, do you want to take a UFC fight in Belfast on November 2016? And it changed on a flip of a coin. And I haven't looked back, and I have never, touch wood, I've never been in that rut since that time, really.
I've seen the video of that call, that video, because your manager recorded it, didn't he? And then I think it's part of some other interviews you've done and stuff. And your reaction, it gets me emotional a little bit, because you kind of burst into tears. You were just, it seemed like this, because I knew a little bit about your story, literally living in the gym and stuff like that. You really just this outpouring of emotion. It looked like just years and years of hard work, and you finally got some kind of validation, and it's emotional to watch you in that moment react to getting called up by the UFC.
Yeah, it was. I'll remember that phone call until the day I die, because I was always, even like I said, growing up in this sport, and not only my dad didn't believe that I could do it, but everybody believed I couldn't do it. At the end of the day, it was, and I proving someone wrong that's such a strong thing. If you set out to proving someone wrong, you can use that to really, really get, be the best person that you can be. And I guess when I had that call, like you said, it was, I think it was something silly. Like I'd started my professional career in 2012, and I'd been training since like 2010 for mixed martial arts, and it was like getting the 6 years of constant hard work and not having the right financial backing, and then getting in there and getting the actual call itself. Look, you're in the UFC, and I used to watch it religiously. I loved the UFC, and I thought maybe one day I'd make it. And then getting the actual call to get in it was like, you just thought it was like that 6 years, and that 6 years got squeezed into that 10 seconds for me. And I just had to let it out, I guess. I'm an emotional person as there is. Like I said, they call me the crybaby. That's what it is, And I had the fight in Belfast, won the fight. And then I spent the next hour and a half, the moments that I can't remember, I'd spent the next hour and a half afterwards crying my eyes out because I've just achieved so I could have finished my career then. Like, that's the thing. I could have finished my career after the first UFC fight. I had 7 in total, but I could have finished after that one fight. I'd done what I set out to do. So everything else from that moment on was a bonus. So like I was 13-0 after a fight. So the realization of losing, that didn't scare me. The realization of finishing up there, I could have lost every single fight from then onwards. I had done what I set out to do. I was the first ever Welsh guy to step foot on the UFC canvas, and I got a win in my first fight. And I was done. That was me completed. I'd completed life. I'd completed what I needed to do, you know. And then, obviously, I was still young though. You know, I was 26 years old, and it's like, well, can't stop now. And it was one of them moments where it was like, well, if you stop now, what else are you gonna do? Because I'm not good at nothing else. I can fight. You know, I might not necessarily enjoy it, but I fight. I can do it well. And obviously, we've had 6 fights since then, and now we're opening a new chapter in that book.
And so to talk about that new chapter, like the move to Bellator. I know you don't like talking about money. You don't have to if you don't want to, but there's been so much in the press around the sort of pay structures of UFC and how we're seeing so many UFC fighters now fighting in Bellator, and recently hearing fighters saying that they've made more in their one fight at Bellator. I think it was Corey Anderson said that he'd made more money in his recent Bellator fight than he had in his, I think he might even have said his whole career put together in the UFC. And, you know, I just wonder how important, you know, the financial implications are for you know, looking at your career and your future within combat sports.
I'll speak. I won't obviously talk about figures, but I'll speak about how much of a difference there is. So I could have had the contract the UFC offered. I could have lost my Bellator fight, my next Bellator fight, and I would have earned more than what I would have if I won in the UFC. So that's double the money there, just there and then, just that little one incident there. Like for me, if I win my next 2 Bellator fights, it would have been, I would have earned more in them 2 Bellator fights than I would have in 7 UFC fights.
Wow. That's a huge difference. Just for clarification, anyone listening that doesn't know, you weren't cut from the UFC or anything. You were on a 2-fight win streak in the UFC, and you tested free agency, right? You just thought, my contract's up. I'm going to just go out there and see what other organizations can offer me.
The actual conversation went like this, right, Blake? It was, there's a guy in that division who had the same record as me at that time. I felt like that I personally had fought better people. We had the same record. So we were both 5-2 with the promotion. And I looked at his paycheck, and he was getting, I think it was like $20,000 more than I was. So I just, I believed that I fought, well, not believed, I did fight better people, you know? And so I said, I want the same as him. I wasn't asking for more. I wasn't taking less, but I wasn't asking for more. So I said a number which was the same, identical to what this guy was getting paid. And he'd had the same record as me, the same amount of fights as me with the promotion. I believed I fought better guys, and they offered me $20,000 less. I can't do nothing on it. You know, I couldn't say no to it. It was a case of, you know, I want to be able to invest in my life after this. You know, I'm going to be done in 5 years, and what am I meant to do after that? It's a case of, I guess you have to have that sort of intelligence with knowing how much you're worth as a fighter. And I always knew I was worth this. I always did know. And to be honest, this isn't where I want to be now. But Bellator, they literally. So when I spoke to my manager, Brian said, "Look, well, what do you want me to do?" I said, "Well, he's got a good relationship with Bellator," and he texted Bellator and said, "Look, they should get back to us in 24 hours." They phoned him up half an hour later. And I think within an hour of having that phone call, the decision was made. It was that quick. And people can say whatever they want to. You know, obviously the UFC is a very well-known machine. And I feel like Bellator is an up-and-coming. Although they've been here a long, long time, I feel like it's up-and-coming. They're doing the right things to get on par with these guys. They're still a while off. They're still a way off, but they're getting there. They're in the right direction. And having the people like Scott Coker there, who is an amazing guy, who has done fantastic things for that promotion. It's going the right direction. And for me personally, it was a no-brainer. I just want, I haven't got children yet, but I know that I saw how hard my mother worked when we were growing up, and I want to be able to be in a position where I can provide for my family, and being a company man and getting beaten up for peanuts ain't going to do that.
Absolutely.
I mean, you mentioned fighters coming over from the UFC to Bellator. One of those guys is in your weight class, Magomed Magomedov. He got a win recently, and he's one of only 2 people to beat your upcoming opponent. I'm going to say Mateos Matos. I'm not sure if I've got his pronunciation of his name exactly right, but you're fighting him on May 21st at Bellator 259. And the only losses Matos has had is Peter Yan, who everyone should know very, very well, and Magomed Magomedov, who I think a lot of people rate very highly. So what are your thoughts on that upcoming fight and on Matos as an opponent?
Matos is not this stereotypical Brazilian who's got a really good ground game. And Matos is a good all-round package, very good all-round. He's good everywhere, not amazing in one aspect, but good everywhere. And I feel like that this is a very, very difficult fight to take first off the bat. This isn't an easy fight. But then again, in the same breath, I never asked for an easy fight. They offered me 3 names. I said yes to every single one of them. It was, it's one of them things now where Matos has signed the contract. So Matos was the one that did step up on this. And it's a difficult fight. This isn't going to be easy. And I'm not thinking for 1 second it's easy. I'm not here going, right, after this guy, I'm going to be asking for this guy. No. I'm solely focused on this fight. This fight is a big fight. There is every chance that I could get caught here. So I need to be careful. I need to make sure I'm on point on my game. And unfortunately for Matos, this is the best version of me has come out of the gym. You know, I feel like I am coming into my prime now. This is Brett Johns coming into his prime. I'm not already in my prime, but I feel different. And especially after our last fight on Fight Island, where I felt like I won the fight, it was a bit scrappy. I won the fight, but I didn't feel like I got to showcase me. But now I do. I get to showcase me, and I get to show the world this changed new version of me. Unfortunately, Matos is in the way. Magomed Magomedov brought the blueprint in front of me, and let's not beat around the bush. It's probably the similar way it's going to go, in my opinion.
Well, you're getting me very excited for the fight already, Brett. And one of the things it sounds like you're in a great place, particularly mentally. It sounds like also physically, you sound like you're doing a really good job of it's a very long training camp, but you sound like you're really there. You spoke before your last fight about happiness being such a huge factor for you, and how in some of your previous fights, your happiness just wasn't necessarily there. You felt like mixed martial arts for you was like a 9-to-5 job. I think I've seen a quote of you saying, but since that time, you've regained your joy for the sport and your happiness for it. And it sounds like you've got it right now when we're speaking to you. So how did that mentality shift come about? Did you have to do anything in particular to rekindle your love for the sport?
Yeah, it did, and it was a very difficult thing to do. I had to say goodbye to a team I was with for 12 years. Towards the end, it kind of went that way, where it was a bit of we just didn't see eye to eye towards the end, which is very unfortunate. But then I got to I got to speak to Shaky and show mixed martial arts, and I had a good relationship with them guys anyway. And the actual initial movement was for me to move to Vegas, but then I went up to help Jack Shaw for his fight in UFC London, which was back in 2020 before the pandemic hit. And I had a chat with Sheikh and said, look, I want to fight you. I want to fight you. And he was happy. And it became, I go up there now and I smile. It's mad because when I used to go to the gym, I used to leave straight away. It was a 9-to-5 job. And people would die to get to the place where I am right now. People would do anything to get and I completely took that for granted. I was unhappy every day. And now it's mad because look, I can go in the May 21st and get not clean and conscious. I've come to terms with that, but after that fight, I'll smile about it. At the end of the day, I'm a happy person in my everyday life. And there is more to this world than fighting, and I've realized that now. And because I've accepted that, it's made me enjoy fighting more, which is mad. You know, it's a crazy old way the sport works, and yeah, it's being happy. A happy fighter is a very, very dangerous fighter, and that's the terminology I use now. A happy fighter is a dangerous fighter, and I'm dangerous right now.
Oh, wonderful, Jack. Brett, Jack. You said Jack Shaw. I mean,
we look the same. We look identical. We look twins.
We've also got an interview with Jack coming up in a little while. So
we both like Oasis. We both look like twins. We're brothers, basically.
Well, and I heard Jack's dad, who's training you, saying that you're both now really pushing each other beyond, because you know, he was saying that maybe you didn't necessarily always have, and Jack didn't necessarily always have the people around them to really push them to the next level. But in Jack and you with Jack as well, you found each other, and that you're able to really push each other now to that next level and find new levels within your game.
It's honestly being with Jack. It's brought me up tenfold, and Jack would say the same. Jack feels the same as well. I haven't been like secretive about that. I message Jack at most days, just tell him thank you. You know, at the end of the day, him and his old man have been absolutely brilliant. Carl Parker, all the guys up there have been amazing, and my other teammates who were there as well. They've been fantastic. They're partly why I'm this happy and why I feel like I do now, you know. And honestly, it's an honor to represent that team now and being at the world stage. And now that Jim gets to say, you know, they've got representatives in Cage Warriors and UFC and Bellator, you know. So I do feel like the Welsh MMA scene is definitely growing in the right direction now, you know.
Wonderful.
Brett, I want to have you on every week. You just put a massive smile on my face when you're speaking. It's like, I'm just feeling good. I might phone Brett every now and again just for a pick-me-up.
like a mindset coach.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Look, Brett, can't thank you enough for your time today, mate. It's been an absolute joy talking to you. And obviously on behalf of both Blake and myself, all the best in the upcoming fight, mate. We'll be rooting for you, as will the whole of Great Britain, I'm sure. And yeah, just wishing you all the best. Yeah,
thank you, boys. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to have a little chat with me as well. It's this is what I mean about the small things about this MMA journey I'm on. You get to meet some great people, so I appreciate that, guys. And hopefully I'll get to speak to you afterwards with a couple of black eyes and a nice big smile on my face.
Wonderful.
Well, we'll hold you to that, mate. And it's honestly, it's our pleasure. It's been a lovely chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Speak to you soon.
All the best, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.